Welcome to Awaken Within. I'm Rocco Anthony Fermisco. Our guest today is Sonia Choquette Tully. Sonia is a successful Hay House author, an American mystic, a talented fifth-generation intuitive healer, and a gifted holistic practitioner with over a decade of life coaching. Her purpose and passion as a light worker is truly infectious, and her words are healing. Most of all, Sonia is a truly authentic, loving, and kind person, living an inspired life while being a service to the world. Thank you, Sonia, for being here with us today.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here connecting with you today.
Oh, you don't know. Doing all these things. So it seems like you're like calling and what you focus on most of the time, to me, would be more about your spiritual practice more than the book or going out on tour or making videos. So is that true? Or
Yeah, well, the thing is I grew up in a very deeply intuitive household. My mom, Sonia Choquette, is an author who's written a bunch of books. And I grew up very much with my intuition and my spirit at the helm of my life. And I saw very often with my friends and in my community that so many people feel so disconnected because they don't have a connection with their own spirit, which for me is in terms like your authentic, true self. When I graduated college many moons ago in 2010, there was an economic crisis, a housing crisis, and I found that so many of my peers really lacked these tools that I grew up with that were foundational to the way that I lived my life. And so I really dedicated myself to wanting to empower everyone to start to have not only a connection with themselves, but with their spirit, and really being able to trust the world and trust the universe. Because I feel like we get so much messaging all the time to be afraid. And we very much live in this paradigm of living from the world from the outside in instead of the inside out. So my sister and I wrote our first book, You Are Amazing, which was very much a direct response to what I and my sister were seeing at the time, especially for so many young people. And there's a lot of really fabulous authors and teachers who I feel very grateful to have spent time with growing up. But now we're in this whole new paradigm. And so we sort of need new tools in order to learn how to navigate, especially with so much noise. So my primary real objective is to teach people how to connect back with their authentic selves in order to really be able to create solid connections in the world, trust themselves, and trust their intuition. And so my favorite ways to do that are with, I get to teach with my mom, which is one of my favorite things, and my sister, which is a blast. And then also in doing my intuitive readings and intuitive coaching, because it's so fun to be able to plug people back into themselves and really allow them to trust themselves and trust their hearts.
oh yeah, yeah. What I love about too, you and your sister too, you're very authentic. Even things like there was maybe about a year ago or something on Facebook, and you're like, my sister's losing her shit. I got the password. Anybody, blah blah blah. I'm like that's to me that means a lot because people want to see somebody authentic. They may want to see a structured interview, and they want really good work if they're like reading something, which your book is pretty amazing. It really I would think too appeals to women. But also it gives not only, they teach spirituality to everybody too, but it also gives a little insight to to girls as well, or women. Yeah. But also I just like the way the book was put together. To me, I mean, maybe I don't read those kind of books or something. I don't know, but it just seemed like this, I don't know, it's just very, very real. And you can just read it. It's like kind of like engrossing, like when you pick up just an article and you're able to read something. So, but it's the whole book. So you just keep going and going and going because it's just one thing after the other with your book. And so
Thank you. I'm really grateful. My sister and I, and especially in writing that book, really wanted to have a conversational tone, because I find nowadays in spirituality, there's been very much this approach from sort of like the teacher at the top is this like top down sort of paradigm. And I find that nowadays that's really changing. You know, one of the things that I saw growing up in the Hay House family and with so many different wonderful thought leaders and authors and is that they're also just like really normal people. And a lot of times in spirituality, we can put our teachers on a pedestal. And of course, they have really wonderful knowledge and things that, but at the same, like good knowledge and they're great teachers. But at the same time, I feel like nowadays it's really important to not only normalize spirituality, but really recognize that all of the tools that we have are very much within us. And great teachers just help to give you that toolbox, but it's really a matter of how we use it. And in terms of just being authentic, you know, for me, I really firmly believe that that's our biggest superpower because it allows people to connect and also you know the vibration resonates. And I find that nowadays with more and more social media and more places in which we can sort of like edit ourselves, being authentic is something that we really have to return to. And I also just feel like sharing real parts of my life or my sister's life or just, you know, are not only a place of being transparent, but also being important because it's like, yeah, I'm also super normal and struggle with all the same stuff that you do. I might just have different tools in order to be able to approach it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it always makes it easier.
Yeah, yeah, they're very important to be authentic because too, then people could relate if you're kind of keeping your, the little problem. You don't have to tell everybody to, air out your laundry, but letting people know, just like your mom, her books are very revealing in the things she's going through, and she doesn't hold back like you. You'll read a book and you'll find out like, these things that happened to her, like in that book that she wrote about taking a walk on the Camino.
Mm-hmm.
She's just kind of like letting everybody know, and it's really great because there are people that are going through these problems, and sometimes they can't relate to someone that they think is all knowing and has everything. And so for somebody to reveal, their problems and how they dealt with it is really transformative to other people that are going through a loss. Maybe it's with their their marriage, or they lose someone. And so all that happening to her it was just a really good healing book for a lot of people. And I recommend it to a lot of people that I knew that were struggling with loss of family and things like that. And people that I've always talking about Sonia, and then I gave them this book and they're like, oh, wow, like this is really great because it's dealing with like a person I know. She like lost her brother out of nowhere, and he had family, and he was relatively, like 45, something like that. And she really liked your mom, so that book, she didn't know that much about her, but then that book was like a healing tool for her.
Oh, for your friend. I'm so grateful to hear that. And, you know, I find that our places of where we can, you know, share our vulnerability, because so often it's been, you know, and especially in spirituality, there can also be this secret shaming if you're not in a good place. And
Yeah.
this sort of idea that there is some sort of spiritual failure of yours if you're in struggle. And I find that a lot of times that really leads to something that I call Namaste Abuse, which a lot of times happens when we get into spirituality as a way to sort of improve upon ourselves. And when we can start to actually share these more vulnerable places of ourselves, it also helps to remind us that not only that we're interconnected, but that our spiritual journey is one that is incredibly human. And no matter if you have all of the tools or meditate constantly or any of the different things, like life still happens. And it's really, I think it's really important nowadays as our world becomes more and more edited to actually share more and more real parts of ourselves, because not only does it allow us to connect to each other, it allows us to connect to our spirit, it allows us to connect to our intuition, and really be able to move with grace, feeling the support from our guides and our angels, and also in getting support from people who are important in our lives.
Yeah, most likely. And not to get off topic, because that's a video you just did recently too about Namaste, and then there's another video I wanted to touch on. But before that, being that we're kind of talking about your book, maybe if you'd like to, tell everybody kind of, you know, the cliff notes or what to expect if they were to read You Are Amazing.
Yeah. So my sister and I wrote this book a few years ago called You Are Amazing. And basically it is a grounded book on how to really get in touch with your intuition. I feel like in the sense of having so much knowledge, it's a really good foundation to start with. It not only gives you a lot of tips and tools on how to start to tune in right now, but also deals with important things like, boundaries or energy vampires, or things that we really interact with in our world. And it's interesting because it was written really simply, and like I said, in a conversational tone, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't have a lot of depth, and that also is really a powerhouse of a book. And it's our first book baby. I feel like actually I think the 2nd year anniversary of it just came out, which is like just happened, which is really exciting. But it's very much a love letter to, people who are in it, and really giving them tools for awakening. Because so often when, we read the books and have the things, and there can be so many different, but she can obviously sometimes just be more and more and more information, but doesn't give us a way to put it into practice. So this book is a very practical book, and a book that you can pick up and thumb through and find all sorts of tools that work. So it's my first book baby, and I love it so much.
Well, yeah, what I love too about the book is too, you don't really necessarily have to be somebody that's looking for spirituality, or but that if you gave it to someone that is more like trivial, that they'll actually read the book, because it's that appealing, because it appeals to just normal kind of girl boy kind of issues and stuff, that kind of just draws you into it, because it's not totally about the 4 steps of meditation and quieting the mind, and people are just like, I'm not into that. But I know, like, my girlfriend, she's a little bit into those things, but I know that if I gave her the book, she wouldn't be able to put it down, just because she would be laughing and, oh my God, they curse in this and they're funny.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I feel like we just really wanted to write a really, really real book, because, times are changing and shifting, and it's really important to be able to not only have things be simple, but accessible. A lot of times our intellect likes to make things more complicated because it makes it feel like more worthy in a sense. And obviously, like, deep spiritual work and deep spiritual study can get more and more complex. There's a lot of wonderful importance to that. But at the same time, having tools and things that you can relate to, understand, and put into practice are ways that you're really going to be able to start to embody not only your intuition, but really feel connected to your spirit and be able to navigate life. And that was our mission, was a really accessible book. So I'm so grateful for your feedback. It really makes my heart feel so happy.
Oh yeah, really. Actually, I'm going to touch on with my girlfriend that part in the book, because a lot of people aren't aware of energy vampires or how people can be draining. But there was a part in the book where you're at a party, and there was this one girl. She wasn't feeling the party, and either you or your sister, felt like there's just something about the party. Maybe we could touch on a little bit for people about energy vampires, because a lot of people aren't too aware.
Totally. And I love this story in the book, because I find a lot of times as empaths and sensitives, we are like very bright lights, and can attract people who feel our loving support. And a lot of times as empathic, intuitive creatures, we can really tune into where their pain is, and a lot of times we can get hooked in. So basically, an energy vampire is anybody who, and there's like different types of energy vampires. I just did an Instagram TV video on this yesterday. But in short, there are people that after you interact with them, leave you feeling drained, confused, anxious, ungrounded. And a lot of times they're sort of like these energetic like black holes, and where we give and give and give and give and, you know, try and come up with creative solutions, or are super loving or kind or patient. And the story that you're talking about was when I was at a party with a friend who I drove home, and she basically downloaded on me for like way too many hours about all the things that were going on in her life and having just absolutely no solution. And basically what she wanted to do was just have an energy dump, and wanted to just sort of like suck my energy as a way to help make her feel better. Because I did, you know, it was like this place of, you know, I also find that a lot of times as intuitive empaths is that we are problem solvers. We are very loving. We are very generous. So when people in our lives show up who need support, we're often the ones at the front line, and sometimes don't necessarily take into account what we are giving of ourselves. And so in order to really navigate, it's really having good energetic boundaries by first trusting ourselves and our own spirit, being aware of what our own energy is, and then also practicing trusting others and trusting others' spirit. You know, you don't always have to trust somebody's barking dog, but you can trust that their spirit knows how to navigate, and that you don't have to be the one to endlessly give. You know, so often nowadays, or our old paradigm was sort of this idea of spirituality is martyrdom. You know, we really, especially in our Judeo-Christian culture, have this idea of like Jesus on the cross who gives totally endlessly, selflessly, and needs absolutely nothing. And as we grow more conscious, that paradigm is actually starting to shift, of where we need to start to take care of ourselves and our sweet spirits. And that giving endlessly is a place where we don't practice not only self-care, but even having good energetic boundaries. And boundaries are ways that we can make ourselves and other people feel and be safe. Because the thing is if you're around an energy vampire and you give all of your energy, what happens is, or you get bit, is the next day you're going to feel the reverberations of that. You know, for me, it can manifest a lot sometimes in feeling really anxious or really ungrounded. And then recognizing that it's not even necessarily my energy, but that I've just sort of glommed onto somebody else's. And so it's a really good tool to actually like stop energy vampires. You know, first of all, being aware of what your own energy is like. I spend every morning just a few minutes of getting in touch with my own spirit and my own heart. And it just even takes a few deep breaths of starting to go there. And then I can be more aware of what comes in to my energy field. You know, second of all, there's another really great tool that I learned from my mom many, many moons ago, is that, you know, our solar plexus is our power center, and it's a lot of times where we receive energy. And so even if we just cross our arms over our solar plexus and even just angle our bodies away a little bit, it's another way that we can deflect energy if we're in a situation where we can't walk away. Let's say if we're with a boss or a family member or whatever. And another really, really, really great way is to start to check in and see what we're available to. And if we're getting bad vibes, give ourselves permission to walk away and know that we don't have to be responsible for someone else. We just have to be responsible to someone else. And being responsible to someone else first means that we have to be responsible for ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and your mom does like a 101 little video on energy vampires, and she talks about you probably saw it, you know.
Yeah.
And there's a great book that goes really into detail for this psychiatrist, and she does a lot of books with Deepak Chopra, Judith Orloff, and
Yeah.
goes into like a lot of details. It's great because she tells, you know, she defines who you might be as, like, if you're an empath, or, you know, what's your personality, and also to see the traits you might be displaying that are actually vampirish, and how to like refrain from that, you know, as well.
Totally. You know, and I think it's just another part too is just being aware of our feelings, our needs, and really being responsible for that. Because sometimes, we come in with our own woundings and ways that we try and get connection and affirmation. And if we act unconsciously, it can be a place of where we can start to shed light for our own personal growth. And also too, of just being more gentle with ourselves and just life. I feel like we really come from a culture that really can be very critical of our sweet, sweet spirit. So that sounds like, yeah, she's a wonderful teacher and author as well as Deepak, definitely.
Oh yeah, I really like her. And then, so being that we're kind of talking about like certain topics that that you been kind of sharing on your videos, and you have some of it in your book as well. I thought, there's a video I did not too long ago, and it was really good. It was a powerful video, and it was about like knowing yourself and your power and not giving it away. Where you're going to do an interview with someone, and they wanted to critique your work. So I thought it'd be great for you to touch on that, because that was a great video.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I just moved to New Orleans. I was living in France and really close, living very close to my mom and my sister. And I moved here and have a boyfriend who travels for work. And so it's been a really big year of tremendous change for me. And, as an empath and sensitive, and intuitive, I recognize that in this place of being ungrounded and in change, it has actually made my energy a lot more porous. So I'm really available to sort of take things in more deeply than if I was feeling more grounded. And so there was a gentleman who invited me to be on his podcast, and we had a preliminary conversation, and then decided to use that conversation to ask me if I was open to critiquing from my work. And I don't know this person, but and this was a place too of really starting to practice my own boundaries, of really checking in with what was true for me. Because if I slowed down and really checked in with my spirit, it would have been a solid no, I'm good right now. But I was like, sure, why not? I want to be available, blah, blah, blah. And we talked for quite a while, and he gave me all this feedback and all these things. And there was part of my little intellect brain that was like, yes, totally right. Oh my gosh, that like preyed upon all of like my worst fears. I was like, oh my God, this is not doing a good job. Who am I? Do I even know what I'm doing? Oh my gosh, I need to redo everything, and threw me into this panic. And it was a place where, and then when I sort of took a step back, I first recognized, that I had gotten psychically slimed. That I had totally gotten slimed in having this conversation with this person who had good intentions, but wasn't necessarily that conscious of his effect or delivery or messaging, and maybe even had his own agenda in a way. But it was an opportunity for me to look very clearly at where I gave away my power. And where, especially as we have our own insecurities and our own fears and our own things, it's, our intellect can get super, super loud and decide that that is the truth. And then when people show up and, sort of hit those places where we're wounded or where we're building our strength, it's interesting how much we can decide to drink that in as true and really give away our power to someone else. And this is what I was talking about earlier, about how we've really had a model of having the world being reflected from the outside in instead of the inside out. And for me, it was a real opportunity to have to start to slow down and really look at, what do I know to be true about myself? And then I could look at that also with what are my actions? Because a lot of times it's like, where our energy goes, where attention goes, energy flows. Yeah. And when we can start to actually piece apart these different things and really start to develop like a catcher's mitt between ourselves and life, it's sort of like the different pieces of information that can come in. It's like, is that actually true? If it's not true, then I don't need to think about it, digest it, worry about it. And again, is a place too where I was recognizing that I really just needed to be more gentle and kind and loving with myself. Because when we get ungrounded or when we're anxious or fearful, our intellect gets really, 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 really loud, and creative is a way to try and keep us safe. And when we're in that space, it's very easy for us to it's almost like your house is on fire and you're scrambling to put it out. And so it's sort of like coming with all these creative solutions to try and find ground again. But in reality, you know, our ground is here. And also a practice of just knowing who it is that we are. Because if we know who we are, then we have something that's called almost like a snake medicine. It's like no matter how many times you get bit, no matter what goes on, you can still come back to that place of your own truth. And, you know, for me, it not only ungrounded me, but first I had to practice what I call my emotional first aid kit, was by starting to be kind and gentle and reassuring and loving to myself. And even just starting to get under the feelings of like, what is my body actually telling me? What are my feelings actually telling me? You know, and it was like, I'm feeling ungrounded. I'm feeling afraid right now. I'm feeling, yeah, and fearful. And that when I could start to look at it from that paradigm, I could start to actually be more gentle and loving with myself, and then start to look at who I know myself to be true. And then also, you know, it's like, and if you're really in it, and for me, I got super slimed even after that, I also just had to go to some of the people who I really, really trust, who are in my inner circle, like my boyfriend or my mom or my sister or my best friend, and have them help to reflect back to me who I am. But first and foremost is starting to build that relationship with yourself so that you can really develop that strong core. It's like having abs of steel, but like intuitive spirit abs of steel.
Good title for a book, right?
Yeah.
Like the buns of steel, and it's just to be abdo. And then I think they went from that to some type of abdominal something of steel. I don't know. You're kind of, well, you're not. You look so young, but you're actually not that young. But I mean, you could be like, oh, 20, but you're actually like in your 30s. So.
Yeah, no, I am a full-grown adult woman. And I thank my mom and my dad for good genes. And
Yeah.
also sunscreen, super important. You got to protect the face.
Yeah, definitely. Your mom, even your grandmother. Wow.
Yeah.
And no problems or anything. I mean, how old's your grandmother?
I think my grandma's like 88 or 89 now. And she's still, I mean, she's deaf but is still amazing. She went to some sort of a community, like elderly dance, and she was like showing everybody the different dance moves. And, and I love that because she's just a reminder, because my grandma survived the Holocaust and came over as a kid, basically like a child, had a bunch of kids, and really has been the one as a matriarch in our family to really teach and demonstrate through her actions of forgiveness, being in touch with your spirit, and also just being, when you're in tune and in touch with your spirit, a hallmark of that is a joyful life. And seeing my sweet little Nana dance around with all these, elderly people just reminded me of how important that is. And also dancing and moving and being in touch with your body.
Yeah, you're good to go, especially with all these anti-aging things that are coming out. It's just pretty incredible. I mean, things that aren't really like scary, just like supplements, like I think it's resveratrol, and and two, I think just how it goes from your grandmother being so young and vibrant at her age, and then someone like Sonia, her daughter, and then you having less of these stressful environments. It's like you're probably gonna live into your hundreds. You're gonna be a gremlin.
Yeah.
You're gonna be walking around like, whoa, what's?
Well, it's also interesting because in terms too of just where we are and learning about consciousness, it's like we start to actually get informed when we're in utero, and that's a lot of times where we get so much different information, and even where our consciousness begins. But yeah, and I find that the people who not only live the longest, I feel like living long is a great thing, but like live a good life are ones that really maintain their sense of humor, which for me is the language of God, and move their bodies, which is where our spirit lives, and practice gratitude and forgiveness. And not forgiveness of like, I forgive you, but just in even just allowing themselves to create more internal space, you know?
Yeah. Actually, something come up to be or earlier talking about vulnerable, and I was listening to I think it was on Netflix, but Brene Brown, and she was talking about yeah, right, and
Love her.
she interviewed like you know the contrast of people very depressed and then people that are just known to be happy, even maybe public figures that are just happy all the time, and she noticed what the tool was is people that are happy all the time when they have vulnerability or they feel like what if something could happen and they start to get nervous and dropping their kid off and they just think about this, they immediately go and default to gratitude, and then within a minute or two they're back to their happy selves because they're embracing gratitude. So that's a good tool when you feel vulnerable and you embrace that gratitude. You come back.
Yeah. For me too, one of gratitude is such an incredible, powerful tool as a way to uh, give us a way to reframe and see our lives. Because we have something in our head like an evolutionary thing that's called like the negativity bias. And what it is it's a way to look and sort of scan in our environment to be like, what's not working. And that a long time ago was because a lot of times we had predators and we're very much in like fight or flight. And so nowadays that we have less of our energy going to just survival, it can really be a place where we can be very critical of ourselves or what's not going on. But if we can practice gratitude and genuine gratitude, there's so much, I think, even right now of like having to be like happy or like positive, that can be another way in which we're hard on ourselves, because it's like, then if we're not doing it right, then we're not in alignment and all this stuff. But even just finding little things to be grateful for. And for me, when I suffer from anxiety or like my mind goes to like those places of like, what if? Because I think a lot of times just as sensitives, empaths, and intuitives, a lot of times we suffer from anxiety because our little antennas are up all the time and we're picking up so often on other people's energy, and we need a lot of support. So for me too, when I deal with my own anxiety, I love practicing gratitude, but also of just reminding myself, like, if I go to worst case scenario, I'm like, well, I trust myself and my spirit to just deal with it as it comes, instead of rehearsing the outcome. Because a lot of times it's just ways that we're trying to find control and ground. And that's a place where, for me, when I look at it that way, of a place to practice being compassionate with myself. Because, being a human being is hard. We have a lot of different experiences and a lot of different things, and we all have our own woundings and traumas and things. And if we can start to expand our own capacity for our own compassion, for our own heart space, then we expand more room for us to just be. And from there, we can make all sorts of decisions. We can actually tune in. We can and be empowered to feel confident in the world.
Yeah. I mean, what was really powerful for me too is finding out that I was empathic. Maybe you could just, in short, tell people what empath is or being empathic, because yeah, I never noticed. Even like going to a mall, I didn't notice like why did I feel a certain way, and when it usually wasn't like too it could be positive if I'm rushing through to get things, whatever. But if I'm just taking my time or have an hour just to just kind of window shop and look, and then I come home and I kind of feel this just kind of weird drain, like I don't know. And a lot of other people I've known too that didn't know anything about being empathic, obviously they were, because too a lot of them say I don't like going to the mall, or I don't, like let's go, but like let's make it short. So maybe if you can let our viewers know.
Well, I find that a lot of times, empathic people are people who really are show up in this world with very open hearts. And because of that, we are extraordinarily porous to the energy that surrounds us. So empathic people, a lot of times we're extraordinarily sensitive. We can deal with a lot of anxiety. We can, and are a lot more aware of the subtle energies that are around us. and very much get directly affected by it. And so it's sort of like, you know, if you don't know that you're empathic, it's sort of like this feeling of like, how come I feel the world so much? Because empathic people do. We really experience the world and our emotions and even other people's emotions in a way more profound, embodied way, because it's a lot more conscious. And so when you're an empathic person and you're not aware of it, it's kind of like walking around without having like almost like your skin in a sense.
Yeah.
and so where we can get very directly affected by the energy. So it's really important for empathic people, to practice like a lot of self-care, have like really solid alone time, and find places to recharge. A lot of time empaths are also introverts. You know, I'm very much an empath, and I'm an extroverted introvert. I love to be out in the world, but I definitely need my time to recharge.
Ambivert. Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
I guess I listen to
Yeah.
everything.
I think I'm a little bit more of an introvert. I like love my alone time. One thing that I love my boyfriend going on tour, I'm like, oh, I have the house to myself. Yay.
Yeah, that's true. The only reason why I think I would maybe say ambivert is just because there's times I'm very introverted, and sometimes too it's to the point where it's like, yeah, I gotta socialize a little more. But then there's times where I'm just like a socialite, just going out and just, but in a good way. It's not like going to a bar, but it's just whatever is going on. Somebody calls me up for something, I never tried it. I'm like, oh, I'm there. Let's do it.
Yeah. And, you know, also too, just as like, you know, as an ambivert, even empathic and all of that, you know, it's just like how finding grounding system and grounding tools and getting really clear on what it is that we need and who we are, so that we don't unintentionally isolate ourselves. Because sometimes I find, even with my clients, that they can, you know, feel so sensitive in the world and don't necessarily have a grounding system for themselves, that then they get overwhelmed and only feel safe within the confines of their own home. And so it's really important to have, you know, be able to find those places of feeling solid and grounded and safe in your body, so that you can be sort of anywhere. But being out is also important because it's really good for our brain and our brain plasticity to have new experiences and experience new things. I feel like I'm with you. Being out and trying new things and being uncomfortable too are some of our best tools to tune into our intuition, tune into ourselves, and also just grow.
Yeah, exactly. And too, what was it? You just, oh, you were touching a little bit about too. It's kind of like the emotion code, and your mom was on that too, as about too. A lot of people don't realize too, to feel the things that don't feel good, and then heal through it. So if you're resisting all these negative feelings or feelings you don't want to, it stays in your body and becomes these trapped emotions. So when there's something very tragic or something that even you feel and other people don't feel, it's a big deal. You need to just kind of recoup. You need to grieve. You need to feel those things and then let it pass through instead of holding it in.
Yeah, I am a huge proponent of that. You know, I find that a lot of times in American culture, there's a lot of this idea of like pulling yourself up by the bootstraps. And that can be, you know, I think almost like code for, you can't, like, if you feel things or are vulnerable, then somehow you are like failing in one way or another. But, you know, our emotions are so like, they're powerful and come in and out like waves and can feel really scary or ungrounding, and especially uncomfortable emotions. You know, oftentimes we get really afraid that we're going to be stuck in that space forever and really resist it. But there's another place where if we can feel our feelings, not only do they help us, give us very direct feedback on like our boundaries and needs, but also can be a place where we can soften and open our hearts, and also where we can learn to sit in discomfort and recognize that we're not in danger, but that we are growing. And, you know, for me, very much, I find nowadays that, especially with just the rise of technology and all of these things, you know, we have gotten our attention span, our capacity to be uncomfortable has become more and more diminished. You know, it's like the first thing that we do is like reach for our phones or reach for, whatever to distract ourselves, when in reality, if we can start to create more internal space and feeling our feelings, they'll actually move, which is so important, and actually have us be able to process them so that we can have more space and capability to in real time. And also, we also don't get stuck necessarily in much as like stories or old patterns. And yeah, feeling our feelings and being in our bodies, I think, are the most essential tools that we have, because our feeling bodies are not only where we pick up on things, but it's also where we get our intuition and where we resonate with things. So if we, and a lot of times when I talk to people, whether it's my clients, even in readings, a lot of times people say, like, I don't know if this is my head or my fears or my emotion or my intuition. But if we can become best friends with our feelings, it helps us to know what is noise and riffraff versus what is true guidance.
Yeah, definitely. And then too, I don't know exactly how much time we got. So with you, because you got to do this when you're ready to get going. But before time runs out, too, wanted to really touch on your spiritual practice, because that seems, like I said, to me, something that you're more. That seems like one of your more like life purpose, something that I think you find probably more valuable than writing books and going out and touring, is just one-on-one and healing people. So maybe you could just get into a little bit about your practice, things that people might want to know when they get in touch with you, what to expect.
Yeah. So I have a spiritual practice. I've been mentoring and doing readings since I've been about 12, and worked with my mom extensively. And it is my greatest honor and joy to do so. So the first thing that I do are intuitive readings. And that is where we really look at your soul purpose. What are the things that you're here to learn? What are the things that you're really moving away from? And in order to really eliminate obstacles that we encounter in our path and can be so unconscious of, we can be not only really self-sabotaging, but sometimes we can feel really stuck. And so, when I do readings, it's really wonderful because it's, saves people time, energy, effort, and gets them not only realigned with their purpose, but with their passion, and giving them a real clear way forward. And then intuitive mentoring, which I also love, I use, my own intuition to help people really, because it's intuitive mentoring, it really depends on the client that I have. I have some clients that I do healing work with, some people in manifestation. But, nowadays, where we have so much information, it's really a place of being able to take ownership of these tools so that you can really not only see, but feel the profound shifts in your life. And, a lot of times we need support. And it's something that we don't necessarily talk about a lot. But in being able to be witnessed and supported, and also given things that actually work for us, it gets us not only back in touch with our spirit, our intuition, but also really starts to move your life out of fight or flight and into flow. Because it's like once, and a lot of times with intuitive mentoring, what we have to do is, a lot of times people come to me and are dealing with some sort of tragic loss of themselves. And first we have to get back in touch with who we are and our body so that we can really start to work towards our real goals without fear, but in flow. Look, there's a little helicopter that wants to say. The thing that I pick up on you very, very, very clearly is that not only, and I feel like the thing that I feel very strongly is that you just have such an incredibly gentle spirit, and have a really open heart, and are very much someone who is here to not only be a leader, but an example, and somebody who is also here to really bring sort of like a grounded framework, not only for spirituality, but, you know, and two, of also being an ambassador as very much a light worker. You know, I think too, another thing that I would really say to you is to really start to pay attention to the places in which you're incredibly competent, because I feel that you have a very competent, very intuitive spirit, and in really taking hold and really taking ownership of those pieces of yourself, that you'll really continue to blossom. You know, I also would just say to you to also be extraordinarily gentle with yourself. You know, I would also say that you're somebody who holds themselves to an incredibly high bar, and that in the really allowing yourself to start to um, uh, notice your gifts, that this can also, and I feel like your gifts include, you know, one of the big thing that just keeps coming to me is just your generosity of spirit. You have a really beautiful way of being able to witness people, and that is a profound gift. It really is. And I just see your, just again, that open-hearted nature that you have is another place that is one of your most gorgeous assets and tools. And as in and yeah, and so I feel like really the place of continuing to grow your own confidence, because you're really here to do really magical things, and also in that of just starting to recognize the effect that you have on whoever you interact with.
Oh, that's great. That's spot on.
Oh, yeah, so that'd be like my 2 minute thing. But yeah, just, you know, you have just I feel very grateful to just connect with you and even experience your sweetness, because it's such a place of opening and softening, and really a place where you very genuinely share yourself with others, and that's such a gift.
Oh, thanks, Sonia. I appreciate that. Especially coming from you. I guess that's a superficial thing to say, but but it's just you know, I look up to you and your mom and your sister. I don't see too much of your sister, but reading the book and seeing her on interviews with you guys, and then you girls. Like I'm from California, but I'm kind of East Coast. I'm from New York, so seeing you guys be silly on your videos and stuff, I'm like, dude, these are like the girls that I hang out with when I was in the East Coast. You know, you guys are.
Yeah. Well, we're
Yeah.
from Chicago, and I feel like that's the fun thing about being able to work with my sister, is, you know, again, really wanting to show an example of leading a spiritual life that isn't, you know, so often spirituality can be really woo-woo, and in reality, it's super normal. And really wanting to normalize it. So I feel very grateful to come from a family where not only is this celebrated, but also encouraged, and also to just feeling very grateful that I have the opportunity to lead by example. And I feel like the best thing is, and the thing that I really want people to feel is that, like, I'm your friend, because I am. Because, you know, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it really shows in the videos, especially when you guys are acting silly, where you guys are like giddy fools, just like almost tickling each other on the couch and talking and like, go get the s'mores or whatever. You know, it was about like a year ago when I finally was like, you know, the book, and then I was like, oh, they got a YouTube channel, and it was just kind of just you guys just playing around on your YouTube, you know, offering a little bit of insights about, you know, certain things, but there was just videos too where you guys were just, you know, being yourselves, and that was a good way to connect. To say, oh yeah, these are my people, or these are girls that if I've, you know, maybe when you guys are doing your talks and you're with your mom or something, and somehow we interact for 15 minutes, I would feel like, oh yeah, like I could totally relate to them. I could take my social mask off and be myself, and they would be totally welcome to it.
Yeah, well, you are our people. You know, I feel like you're right here in it with us. You are our people. And it is so wonderful to find people who are part of our tribe. And I feel super grateful for that. And, also in just feeling, and even in just sharing yourself, because that in and of itself is too a gift.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, I guess before I wrap it up too, there's a couple little things. One thing too, it came to mind when you were talking about life purpose and stuff. Um, Fiona Lee Jones, she's one of the ones that works on my channels, and she does something. Have you ever heard of something called hands analysis? It was developed by Richard Unger.
No, I haven't. I would love to look it up.
Yeah, and from what I hear, I'm not too sure, but I think Hay House was going, or maybe they are going to publish, because he's well renowned, and she does these hands analysis. I think the thing cost crazy. It was like, I think it was like 13,000. She had to go from Seattle, and then he has a place here in California, and so she traveled and incorporated, and she's been doing it for a few years. So if you ever want to come on again, and maybe 6 months from now, maybe have her interview, because she's a great interviewer. And if you wanted to as well, maybe if you wanted to get your hands analyst on there too, but read on it if you're just.
Yeah, well, I'd like talk to her first, make sure that's
Oh,
something.
she'd love to do it. I mean, I talked to her the first time. I was like, I got a hold of her, and she might do a guided meditation with us. So, but
Yeah,
also,
it sounds really wonderful and interesting. Yes, definitely.
yeah, and you can go on my YouTube channel, and there's a couple of videos where she, goes into what hands analysis is too. So,
Cool. I will
yes.
definitely look into it. I'm always loving new tools and ways to access our not only divine guidance, but intuition and all of it. So that sounds fabulous. I'll definitely check it out.
Yeah, and I hope to, whenever time clears up, we will get to that guided meditation, because that's one of my passion projects is someone that has never did a guided meditation, and then like it's like you can enter their world. It's like they write it, there's music to it, and it's like, oh wow, I could be like meditating with Sonia Choquette Tully or Sabrina, and
I love that thought. I never thought about it that way, but that's so true. And yeah, I would love to do that. And also, before we wrap up, I also just want to say, also don't forget to follow us on Instagram at It's Sonia and Sabrina, or check out our website, soniaandsabrina.com, where we have a free ebook and mini course. And also, if you're interested or available, you can always book a free 15-minute call with me to see if a reading or mentoring is a good fit, because there are so many wonderful teachers and people out there, and it's so important to have somebody that really resonates with you. But I am so grateful for our time to connect.
No, you don't know, Sonia.
I really look forward to meeting you in person one day and following up, with this hands analysis or this guided meditation. I'm open and available to both out the window. So I'm
Definitely.
really glad. Thank you for following up. I can't tell you how happy I am to have just met you and just connected with your sweet, sweet spirit.
Oh, you're the sweetest too. Your mom. I don't know too much about Sabrina, but she seems like a sweet person, and somebody that's good at giving honest information. That's a friend, not trying to be a friend and offer what do you call that? False praise,
Yeah, no. Sabrina is very shoot from the hip, which I super appreciate. We are a good team.
Yeah, I'd love to have her on too. If she's ever, I know she's just got married in Paris. You guys live the life. But thanks for making my day. And as soon as this video gets out,
thank you for your time, and send me all the stuff when it comes up, and I'll link it.
Okay, have a wonderful day.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Our Patreon link below has a handful of giveaways from amazing books, alongside live streaming, Q&A, authors, mentors, and life coaches. We are continually growing our community. Feel free to share ideas you'd like to see. Subscribe to bookmark us, or click on the notification bell.